I have a dream, said Martin Luther King Jr. But that dream has not come to pass. We are all God's children, says the Bible. But to a world who paints our Lord white, it is clear who are his favorites. So we continue to march and protest against a system not designed for us, to stand in vigil once again as another black or brown life is senselessly taken by those who cannot see a common humanity. Do we continue to push ahead, stuffing down the pain and humiliation, trying to prove we are equality qualified, equally worthy, equally deserving? I too went to college, received honors, and graduated with a debt that will last my nieces and nephews' lifetimes. I too pay taxes, wondering why I pay for services often denied to me, safety nets that may not be available for my old age. I too have a dream, but unlike the Honorable Reverend Dr. King, I know it is not the little children of God who need to hold hands and let freedom ring. My dream is that one day the world will stop trying to merge us into one. I do not want to become lost in the melting pot of uniformity. I am not suggesting segregation or separatism. Rather, true pluralism. Would you have us erase the soul of the blue or the essence of rock? Where would we be without rice and beans, meat and potatoes, jambalaya and baklava? Where would we be without the taiko drums of Japan, the steel drums of Trinidad and Tobago, or the djembe drums of West Africa? Where would we be without variety or spice, whether of crayons or of cars? We are not a democracy without Muhammad, Brahma, Allah, and God. We are not a land of freedom when differences are merely tolerated. We cannot be a United States until diversity is respected, admired, blessed, and honored. This here is my dream. Is it not easier to learn to appreciate instead of ignoring or eliminating those differences we know so little of and therefore fear? I dream a beloved community of multicultural splendor where everyone is centered and all are supreme. I dream of a world where we feed one another and live in cooperation of the earth. I dream of a universe where every color of light shines against the beautiful dark that embraces us all. Welcome to Holston Valley Unitarian Universalist Church. I am Sarah, and I am your service leader for the day. The poem I just read is Kristen L. Harper's A Different Dream from her book, The Darkness Divine, one of many that I brought home from General Assembly a few weeks ago. This call for diversity spoke to me, as I hope it speaks to you at this time, and we will be hearing another of her poems at the end of the service. Whether you're with us on the internet or in the chairs around me, we are one community united in our commitment to each other and our commitment to live out our principles in the world. Today, we welcome Matthew Hawn to speak with us. For 16 years, Matthew has taught economics, world history, contemporary issues, and personal finance, and coached baseball, softball, and football in the Sullivan County school system here in Tennessee. On May 5th, 2021, Sullivan County Schools dismissed Matthew for discussing racial equity and justice with a contemporary issues class. Today, he will be discussing the consequences of these laws for teachers, students, and the public education system, and his personal experience over the last year after the dismissal. Our risk assessment team, using a variety of metrics, has determined that we are at a low risk level. This means that if you are fully vaccinated, you do not need a mask. If you wish to wear one, there are masks in the foyer by the front door. Thank you for wearing a red, green, or yellow wristband. I forgot to grab one, but thank you all for grabbing one to indicate your personal comfort level. Thank you for keeping this section to my right as a fragrance-free section, and for your patience as we navigate new ways of living out our principles within our church. Thank you for showing so much care by following our guidelines. This is love in action. For our opening hymn, we will be singing Gathered Here. It's in the gray hymnal, number 389. Please rise in body or spirit and join me in hymn number 389 in the gray hymnal, Gathered Here. Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power, Spirit, draw near. Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power, Spirit, draw near. Spirit, draw Recognizing the beauty around us and within us, in voice and spirit, we gather to light our chalice. May we savor the beauty of our abundance and diversity, always cherishing one another and our earth. May we remember to inhale the lushness in life, knowing that we are a people of beauty. We welcome you, old friends and new, young and old. You are an essential part of our celebration today. Whether today is your first or your 1000th Sunday with us, we are stronger because of your presence. We are one people of many beliefs, many origins, sexualities, and genders. We are all growing, all learning, all loved. Just as you are welcome here. Today, we welcome and celebrate our pianist, James. He will be playing a piece that he has chosen, and I will invite him up here to introduce his choice.
The piece I'll be playing today is Mozart's Fantasy in D minor. It's a very fun and interesting piece, and I really hope that you all enjoy it. It's a lot different from the typical Mozart piano pieces you usually think of, but it does have some of the Mozart flavor, and I hope you all like it.
Thank you, James. Come to this community with all that you are. Your joys and sorrows are welcome here. If you'd like to share a joy or sorrow in person, you may use the candle cards located on the back shelf. They look like this, and the back shelf is that way. If you'd like to share a joy or a concern from a distance, please email Reverend Tiffany at minister@hvууuc.org. At our current risk level, we will not be inviting people to come up to light their own candles. Instead, my chalice lighter will light them for you, so you may stay in your seats. If you want a candle to be lit for yourself, a loved one, or a situation close to your heart, I will invite you to make that request by standing or by raising your hand when loving kindness plays in just a moment. Then I will acknowledge each of you with a motion of my hand, and you may sit down or lower your hand after I have done so. And so we light our first candle for you who are not in the building, but are ever in our hearts and minds. We light a final candle for all that remains unspoken in our hearts and minds. Our reading today comes from the book Cast, The Origins of Our Discontents by Isabel Wilkerson. We in the developed world are like homeowners who inherited a house on a piece of land that is beautiful on the outside, but whose soil is unstable loam and rock, heaving and contracting over generations, cracks patched, but the deeper ruptures waved away for decades, centuries even. Many people may rightly say, I had nothing to do with how this all started. I have nothing to do with the sins of the past. My ancestors never attacked indigenous people, never owned slaves. And yes, not one of us was here when this house was built. Our immediate ancestors may have had nothing to do with it, but here we are, the current occupants of a property with stress cracks and bowed walls and fissures built into the foundation. We are the heirs to whatever is right or wrong with it. We did not erect the uneven pillars or joists, but they are ours to deal with now. And any further deterioration is, in fact, on our hands. Like other old houses, America has an unseen skeleton, a caste system that is as central to its operation as are the studs and joists that we cannot see in the physical building we call home. Caste is the infrastructure of our divisions. It is the architecture of human hierarchy, the subconscious code of instructions for maintaining, in our case, a 400-year-old social order. Looking at caste is like holding the country's X-ray up to the light. I'd like to now welcome Matthew Hawn to the pulpit to speak for us this morning.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you all for having me. It's really good to be here. I've driven past this building for the last 30 years, and now I'm finally here. So it's really, really cool. So I've always wondered what it looks like in here. But thank you for having me here to speak and share this space with you. My name is Matthew Hawn, and I'm a social studies teacher and a baseball coach, and I taught for 16 years in Sullivan County schools. On May the 5th, 2021, the same day that the state of Tennessee's General Assembly passed its anti-CRT legislation, I was dismissed from my job for talking about racial equity, racial justice, and white privilege with a contemporary issues class. People ask me all the time what this past year has been like, and because I am still in litigation, I can't talk about the particulars of that, but this past year has been challenging. I have received support from all over the country and here at home. My family and my friends have been super, super supportive, and I'm appreciative and grateful for that. It's meant the world to me to have teachers and students send words of encouragement and email me since this began. I have reconnected with old friends and been humbled by my former students in their response to my dismissal. And the community has been extremely supportive of me. Whenever I see people out, they ask me how I'm doing, they ask me how my family is doing, and then they ask, do you need anything? Can we help you? And I'm eternally grateful for that. But it's when I'm alone with my thoughts, it's when this becomes more challenging. I think about the challenges of an unknown future, a looming legal case, grieving the possible loss of a career because I still plan on getting my job back, being absent from the classroom from a job that I love and I like to think I was pretty good at, missing the students that I had in class but before I was dismissed and getting to see them graduate. I was not able to do that this year. Fighting depression and anxiety and having people across the country watch this case and the outcome of it in this battle of CRT will kind of predict on in which way we are moving as a country. How am I going to live 10 years from now? And the list can go on and on and on. I never thought that I would be in this situation here in this room speaking with you. Let's be honest, the reason why I'm here is because I was dismissed from my job. And that's okay because this is an opportunity. The thing that has carried me through this is finding opportunity in trauma and being grateful for that. Like this has been challenging and difficult, but I wouldn't be here sharing this space with you lovely people had I not been dismissed, right? Like I wouldn't have been humbled by my former students and getting to hear them talk about their time in my classroom. You know, I had one student say in Coach Hawn's class, I learned that it was okay to change my mind. And that it was okay to be wrong. Because when we're wrong, there's an opportunity to learn. And that just, you know, that made me feel good. You know, I have also had the opportunity to become friends with the poet whose poem I shared in class, Kyla Janae Lacey. Check out her work. It is absolutely fantastic. But she and I talk once a week and text almost daily. You know, I've reconnected with old friends. And my former AP English teacher and I, we talk 2 or 3 times a week, and we have dinner or lunch once a month. Those are opportunities, and I'm grateful for those. My AP English teacher also, who I look up to, who was a fantastic educator, also gave me a nod of approval on my lesson plans and the way that I operate my classroom environment. And that was it for me. That's all I really needed, because she was fantastic. It's nice being up here in front of people again. You know, as a teacher, you know, we do demand attention. We do like the attention. So while I have you here in this space, let's talk a little bit about critical race theory. Let's talk about what it is and why there is a backlash against it and a panic. Let's talk about how that panic and backlash is playing out in state and local legislation, the effect on public schools and public school teachers, and then what does this mean for us as a community? I'm going to read from the American Bar Association. CRT is a practice of interrogating the role of race and racism in society that emerged in the legal academy and spread to other fields of scholarship. Kimberly Crenshaw, who coined the term CRT, notes that critical race theory is not a noun but a verb. It cannot be confined to a static and narrow definition, but is considered to be an evolving and malleable practice. Critical race theory critiques how the social construction of race and institutionalized racism perpetuate a racial caste system that relegates people of color to bottom tiers. I heard Professor Crenshaw speak in a meeting earlier this week, and she described critical race theory as much of what we, black and brown people, use to survive in the world. It's being followed by security guards when we enter places to shop. It's having conversation with our kids about how to interact with the police. It's looking at a history that for most of it, considers us second-class citizens. It's fighting for voting rights and the closing of polling places in our neighborhoods. Now, the question is this being taught in public schools? And the answer is, well, kind of, okay? Do you all know what string theory in physics is? Okay, me either. I don't either. I'm a social studies teacher, but I'm going to read this from Wikipedia. And yes, Wikipedia, that's okay, don't. Just for the sake of being here. String theory is a theoretical framework in which the point-like particles of particle physics are replaced by one-dimensional objects called strings. Now that makes absolutely no sense to me at all. But if you read further about string theory, one of the principles of it is gravity. Now, I think everyone in here knows what gravity is, correct? Gravity is one of the very first things we teach in a high school physics class. But because we teach gravity in high school physics, does that mean we are teaching string theory? No, it doesn't. It's kind of the same principle with critical race theory. We talk about slavery and the effects on the people. We talk about slavery and the effect it had on the enslaved people. We talk about Jim Crow. We talk about mass incarceration. We talk about school segregation in schools. But that doesn't mean we are teaching critical race theory. Critical race theory is a graduate level law school class. It is not being taught in second grade social studies. It is not being taught in high school social studies. Nowhere in the Tennessee State Standards does it mention critical race theory. Now, I don't know about the other 49 states, but I would be willing to bet that if you were to look at them, you would not find critical race theory there either. Now, why is there such a backlash against critical race theory? Well, note the timing of this panic. What happened in 2020? We had a racial reckoning with the killings of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. Okay? It's coming after the work of people like Hannah Nicole Jones and Ta-Nehisi Coates, whose voices were once segregated, are now being allowed and discussed in the marketplace of ideas. Right? And we've seen this in the past, right? After the passing of the Civil Rights Act, there was backlash. After school desegregation, there was backlash. You know, I'm sure there are plenty of other instances in history, but due to time, I'm not going to get into that. But I'm sure you all can think of those and say, well, this is just another iteration of that backlash. Okay. Opponents claim that students are being taught that white children are inherently racist and that white pupils should feel anguish about the color of their skin because of the actions of their ancestors. Another complaint is that students are being taught to hate America. What? Yeah. Now, emphasizing the arrival of the enslaved people in 1619 as the founding of the United States instead of 1776. Okay? We aren't modeling or we aren't teaching our students American exceptionalism. America's curriculums, they say or they claim, is focusing on its faults instead of how great we are as a country. Now, if you put that into practice in other areas, take medicine, for example. Well, are we only going to study healthy bodies? That doesn't make sense, right? A few years ago, my sister had colon cancer. Now, imagine 25 years ago if we had just stopped researching colon cancer. We don't do that with anything else. Like, we look at problems and we try to solve those problems, those issues. And that's what we do in the academic arena. Okay? In the state of Tennessee, the CRT panic started with a representative who got on the floor and said that he received an email from a 7-year-old student claiming that she was depressed and suicidal after a discussion in her school about white privilege. She said she's ashamed to be white. They said they claim in North Carolina that students were made to stand up and apologize for the actions of their ancestors. Now, I bet you can probably guess that these claims are completely unfounded and they haven't been proven. But this is what we're up against. This is turning into legislation at the state. Okay. This came after an equity gag order signed into an executive order by President Donald Trump after he heard a guy by the name of Christopher Rufo go on a talk show host program on a network that I won't mention. But he said that it is absolutely astonishing how CRT has pervaded the very institution in every institution in federal government. So the president signs a gag order banning federal agencies, contractors, and grant recipients from conducting trainings programs that address systemic racism and sexism. And then that filters down to the states. Currently, or since that passing, in the fall of 2020, 42 states have introduced bills, 17 have restricted critical race theory and divisive concepts. Now, what do these bills say? Well, in the state of Tennessee, for K through 12, and now for our colleges and universities that have typically enjoyed a strong protection of academic freedom, these bills say a divisive concept means that one, race or sex is inherently superior or inferior to another race. An individual, by virtue of the individual's race or sex, is inherently privileged, racist, sexist, or oppressive, whether consciously or subconsciously. If an individual should feel guilt, discomfort, anguish, or another form of psychological distress solely based on the individual's race or sex. Now, in the classroom, how do we keep, or even how do we monitor making students feel uncomfortable? A lot of students feel uncomfortable in geometry. I felt uncomfortable diagramming sentences. I was terrible at it. But they aren't enacting legislation on that, right? In colleges, they are now in the state of Tennessee, where, like I said, they typically enjoy academic freedom. Each public institution of higher education shall conduct a biennial survey of the institution's students and employees to assess the campus climate with regard to diversity of thoughts and the respondents' comfort level in speaking freely on campus, regardless of political affiliation or ideology. They're conducting surveys on the political climate of our colleges and universities. I can think of a few problems with that, right? First of all, how do you know the survey results are accurate? How do you know people are getting on there and telling the truth? I don't think they've quite figured that out yet. I'm waiting on it, so maybe one day we'll see that. In high schools, in districts, there is part of this legislation that says schools shall not permit the usage of curriculum or supplemental instruction materials that include or promote a host of important social and historical concepts, including racism, sexism, the violent overthrow of the United States government, and other forms of oppression or division based on a number of identities. It permits instruction that discusses history of an ethnic group and the impartial discussion of controversial aspects of our history, and the impartial discussion on the historical oppression of a particular group of people. As a teacher, how do you do that? How are you impartial when discussing Native American genocide? When you hear stories that, U.S. troops were giving Native Americans blankets infected with smallpox. How are you impartial when talking about Jim Crow? These are some of the challenges, these are some of the challenges our teachers are facing. If I were a teacher, I would not know how to prepare lessons and talk with my students honestly and in a safe classroom environment with language like this in legislation. Right? Because it's our job as teachers to allow students to analyze and evaluate on their own concepts and ideas. And now we're banning them outright or having impartial discussions. So does that mean if a student takes a strong stand against Jim Crow, how am I supposed to react to that as a teacher? Because I'm supposed to remain impartial. Because of mask mandates and the pandemic and this CRT panic, we know what opponents of CRT and mask mandates are doing. They're effectively trying to end public education. The state of Tennessee opened up shop for 50 charter schools to steal money from that public schools desperately need. Right? And they're not shy about that. I don't know if you all, I'm sure you did, you saw the video of our governor sitting next to this guy from Michigan who called teachers the dumbest people at the dumbest colleges, right? That didn't go over too well. Thank goodness, right? Because we have people standing up for public education. Because what are they saying about this? Like, what are they really saying? Well, they're saying that we don't trust our schools and our teachers to educate our students, is essentially what they're saying. They are legislating our curriculum and saying that because you are having conversations about white privilege and about the effects of discriminatory practices by our government, by our culture, we don't trust you to teach our students anymore. And look, mind you, these bills and these things aren't coming from our students, because I can assure you, 100% positive, that our students want to have these conversations. They are aware of the world around them. And they want to have a place where they can come and discuss these things. That's what we did in my class. That's contemporary issues. I honestly don't know how I would teach this class with legislation like this out there. I've thought about it and I have no idea, because I couldn't do it in good faith to my students, right? Because if a student brought up an issue with race in the United States, I would have to cut them off and say, no, we can't talk about that, because I don't know where that conversation is going to go, and I may make someone feel uncomfortable. Or it may make someone feel uncomfortable. And the penalties for that is so steep, right? Teachers could lose their job, their license could be suspended, and if the state comes in and has to prosecute the teacher or investigate the teacher, and it's not the school district, then the state is going to withhold millions of dollars in funding from that school system. Millions of dollars. Now, if I'm a teacher, I don't want that on my conscience. Especially if my school is a Title I. Thank you, Leanne. My sister, she's an assistant principal, so she keeps me up on my vocabulary. Especially if I'm a Title I school, where so much of my school population gets free and reduced lunch. So what can we do as people living in this world and in this community? Where does this leave us moving forward? You know, a lot of times people come up and they talk about these are perilous times that we are living in, right? We've heard that a lot. I'm going to be honest, we're kind of running out of runway with academic freedom with these bills. 42 states have attempted to pass anti-CRT legislation, and these are turning into and introducing other isms and phobias. I think I said that right, Obias, yeah. Don't say gay bills in Florida. Book bans for obscene material where librarians could face criminal charges. This CRT was just the gateway. And now look at the legislation they're passing behind it. What can you do? Well, like I mentioned before, the first thing is tell a teacher that you love them and that you support them and that you're there for them. Because we need that now more than ever. Run for office if you are so inclined, or just attend school board meetings, get up and speak and let them know how much you appreciate public schools, the job that they are doing, the school board, and the job that our teachers are doing for our students. And finally, continue to educate yourselves, because this isn't an issue that is going to stay static. It's going to change within the next year. And this is going to be here for the next couple years. We just saw to the north of us a governor win on an anti-CRT platform. This is going to continue at least through 2024. Continue to educate yourselves about this issue. I think I'm finished. Yeah, I'm good, yeah. All right, thank you all. Oh, thanks. Here you go.
Thank you. We extinguish this flame, but keep its light in our hearts with its message of love and justice, taking it outside these walls to the world we live in until we are together again. We thank you for being with us today. Thank you for the smoke as well for joining us. It's always an issue. We hope that you are giving some thought to how you want to be a part of this community that works together and meets the moment. After our benediction, feel free to linger after the service and join us for coffee hour, where you can also talk with Matthew about his talk today. You will find coffee and cookies that way in the Fred Ballroom. I invite you to join us next week, July 24th, for a service focused on Star Trek and how science fiction can help us explore big questions in life. After the service on the 24th, we will be holding a listening circle for people interested in talking about the music program here at Holston Valley. We've had to adapt and evolve many times throughout the pandemic, and we're probably not done yet. This listening circle is for both people who like listening to music and for people who like to make music. So as a chance, this will be good for you to see where we can take our music program here at Holston Valley. As August nears, we are needing volunteers to help teach religious education. This year, we are focusing on connection, not content. And as such, we need volunteers to help teach and connect. If you are interested, please see me after the service, or you can email our Director of Religious Education at dre@hvууuc.org. You can register your children and youth for religious education or for OWL by using the QR code in the bulletin. And if you're curious what religious education or OWL is, also see me or email the DRE. On Saturday, August 20th, we will be hosting a kirtan concert here from 4:30 p.m. to 6 p.m. This musical concert is designed to be an interactive experience for everyone in the family. It can be just as easily enjoyed solely through the listener's experience, but encourages participation in its repetitive and meditative sounds. There will be an opportunity to make a donation at the door. If you have any questions about this experience, please reach out to Karis at musicdirector@hvууuc.org. We also need volunteers for Tri-Pride on August 27th for both the booth and walking in the parade. Please see Dottie for more information. You can also learn more about the many opportunities for fellowship, justice work, and working together by visiting our website, hvууuc.org, and checking out our news and events sections, or by getting a paper copy of our newsletter, which you can find on the back table. Our closing hymn for the month is hymn number 1010, We Give Thanks. The writer of this song, Wendy Luella Perkins, wrote another verse that's not in our hymnal. I almost dropped it. Wrote another verse that's not in our hymnal, so we have put in an insert. We will sing the verse we know, then the new verse, and then the verse we know one more time. This is also when we will pass the offering plate. The contributions that you make during the offering supports the way that we build each other up within this community and also gives us the resources that we need to stretch out into the wider world to make a positive impact. If you're making a pledge payment, please mark it as such. And thank you so much for your contributions. Please rise in body or spirit for our closing hymn, number 1010, We Give Thanks, with the insert. As we move into you may be seated in body or spirit. You don't want to stand for the rest. You can. As we move into coffee hour and our week ahead, carry this reminder from Kristen L. Harper's poem, It Begins With. It begins with knowing your biases, your stereotypes, your assumptions, your judgments, and how to set them aside and receive the person who is in front of you, not the one you think you know. It begins with owning your power and privilege, your position and comfort, and being willing to let it go. It begins with truly looking at one another, noticing that not all black and brown people look alike, are alike, believe alike, experience or reach alike. It begins with reaching out, making the first move, offering the first invitation for coffee or tea or a walk in the park or a trip to a museum. It begins with hello, not a touching of hair or bodies, just hello. It begins with curiosity about our full lives, not about the hard experiences, not if black and brown skin burns in the sun, not about dreadlocks or braids or straight black hair. It begins with listening, not constantly centering yourselves, but to whatever is shared, whatever is believed, whatever is meaningful, whatever might connect. It begins with attention to your words, your language, your expressions, and the impact they have, without dismissing or belittling. It begins with understanding, not making judgments about Christian, Buddhist, Hindu, humanist, or earth-centered faith, understanding that there are many ways to believe, all valid, all restorative, all equal. It begins with accompaniment, following, not leading, learning, not teaching, supporting, not just taking. It begins with commitment to stay with each other through the discomfort and anger, to bridge the barriers, to build trust. It begins with accepting the joy and the challenges, the quirky or protective actions, the need for space where you may not be able to follow, the need for distance that you may not be able to bridge. It begins with believing the experiences so foreign from your own, the daily fights for dignity, the trauma of a life surviving the gauntlet of hate and ignorance, the mixture of laughter and tears, passion and sorrow. It begins whether a relationship, a friendship, or a partnership. It begins with you. Please join us for coffee hour.